A 36-year-old woman named Yamazaki Misaki lay dying from cancer, reflecting on her life as an introverted person who had never pursued love. Her deepest regret was that her treatment had left her unable to have children, a dream she always cherished, and as she passed, she wished for a second chance at life. Her wish was granted as she awoke as Isabel Dora Simmons, a beautiful 17-year-old girl in a fantasy world. She had suddenly regained all her memories from her past life as Misaki and now possessed the knowledge of both lives. She found herself in the body of a count's eldest daughter, living in a world resembling medieval Europe, where a maid was gently brushing her long hair. During a meal with her family, Isabel's father asked if she was ready for her wedding, which was happening the very next day. While she maintained a calm and composed smile, inside she was in a complete panic. She had never even met her future husband, who was described as a wealthy duke from a nearby province. This duke was a man in his 30s who already had a child, making him a less-than-ideal match for a young noble girl's first marriage, but his immense wealth meant he did not require a dowry from her financially struggling family. Isabel understood that this marriage was a great opportunity for her poor family, whose home was filled with worn-out furniture and who could only afford a single maid and attendant to do all the work. Her last engagement had been broken because they couldn't pay the dowry, so this wealthy duke was a perfect solution. With the mind of a 36-year-old woman, Isabel was actually relieved that her groom wasn't a young man closer to her new age. She realized why the original 17-year-old Isabel would have been devastated by this forced political marriage to an older man. Watching her from a distance, her servants, Sally and Oliver, were confused by her calm demeanor, with one thinking she'd gone mad from her hatred of marriage and the other believing she had simply become more rational. Seeing her quiet acceptance, her father praised her for having matured. From Misaki's perspective, this marriage seemed like a wonderful deal, promising a life of comfort without any harsh rules. Isabel noticed that everyone in this new world was incredibly beautiful, including herself. She looked at her reflection, admiring her own dark purple hair, striking golden eyes, and flawless white skin. She knew the original Isabel had been a bit spoiled and rebellious, but as she was about to leave, she thought her own new face looked strangely familiar. As she traveled to her new home, a man informed her that Lord Theobald was waiting for her in the Divine Duchy. The names Theobald Aloys Divine and the Divine Duchy struck a chord with her, and she suddenly remembered they were from an online manga she had been reading in the hospital called The Ice Hero and the Sacred Jewel. She recalled that the main hero of that story was named Noah Kimberly Divine. Isabel's mind raced as she pieced together the plot of the manga. The story was about a boy named Noah who was mistreated by his abusive stepmother after his real mother died. His father, Theobald, was completely indifferent to his son's suffering. At 16, Noah was forced to fight in a war where he met a kind woman named Florence, who helped him to open his heart again. She remembered the final chapters of the story where the evil stepmother and the crown prince conspired to kill Noah. Of course, the heroes Noah and Florence eventually defeated them and found their happy ending. It was then that Isabel had a terrifying realization. She had been reincarnated as the evil stepmother, the very character who is ultimately killed by the hero. Knowing her tragic fate, Isabel was determined to change her destiny and felt that the idea of harming a child was completely unthinkable to her. Her father complimented her beautiful appearance in her wedding dress, while she privately considered that if she couldn't change her fate, she would just have to run away with some valuables when the war started. Upon arriving at the grand estate, her new husband, Theobald, didn't even bother to look at her. She felt awkward, realizing they had never even spoken or properly met, and she wondered why he had married at all but was too intimidated to ask. Theobald then walked away without a single word, leaving Isabel standing alone. A man named Walt apologized for the Duke's busy schedule and proceeded to introduce her to the entire household staff as the new Lady Isabel. Isabel wasn't particularly bothered by her husband's cold shoulder, as she knew from the manga that he disliked women and already had an heir, which meant she wouldn't have to perform any marital duties. She also knew that Theobald was not the one who directly caused her death. With a renewed sense of purpose, she proudly introduced herself as Isabel Dora Divine, ready to take on her role as the lady of the estate. She addressed the well-trained servants with confidence, knowing she couldn't show any weakness. Just as she was thinking about what to do next, servants called out for Lord Noah, and she braced herself. Her greatest challenge, Noah Kimberly Divine, the boy who was destined to kill her, had just arrived. When she saw him, she was completely taken aback. Noah was an incredibly adorable little boy who looked like an angel. She couldn't believe this was the child that the original Isabel was supposed to have abused. The start of the manga's main story was still over 10 years away, and right now, Noah was just a small, innocent boy. As a maid named Camilla was about to take him away, Isabel stepped in, determined to get closer to the boy who was now her stepson. She confidently told Walt that she wanted to greet Noah properly, lying that she was used to children from having to care for younger siblings in her poor family. In reality, her only experience came from a past job. Kneeling down, she gently introduced herself and asked the little boy his name, but he remained silent. She turned to his attendant and asked how old he was. The young woman, who Isabel had assumed was his nanny, replied that Noah was 3 years old but couldn't speak yet, which shocked Isabel. The attendant explained she had only recently started caring for Noah because his previous nanny had tragically died in a carriage accident a month ago. When Isabel asked Walt if they were looking for a replacement, he admitted that because the Lord was so busy, the process hadn't moved forward. Isabel understood the situation perfectly. The servants couldn't hire a new nanny without Theobald's permission, and since he was completely uninterested in his son, Noah had been left with just an attendant. She told Walt that since she would be living there for the rest of her life, there was no need to pretend about the Duke's neglect. She pressed further, sensing that 1 month without a nanny couldn't be the only reason for his silence. Walt confessed that the previous nanny had kept Noah confined to his room and avoided speaking to him much, likely to prevent his voice from disturbing the Lord. Isabel came to the heartbreaking conclusion that Noah's inability to speak was a result of severe neglect and isolation. While his basic physical needs were met, the lack of communication and interaction had stunted his development. She knew the servants were in a difficult position, unable to go against their master. As the new lady of the manor, she felt it was her responsibility to intervene, even if it meant going against the Duke's wishes. She firmly believed that it was the duty of adults to protect children. Her first idea was to read Noah a picture book, but she quickly discovered that no such things existed in this world. Undeterred, she used the artistic skills she had developed in her past life to create a paper theater, a handmade picture story she called Dragon Pair. When she presented it to Noah, his reaction was blank, which she expected from a child who had never seen anything like it. Isabel knew she had to win his affection to save her own life, so she began her performance with great enthusiasm. The story, which she had borrowed from a famous manga from her old world, was about a brave boy's adventure filled with dragons, magic, and jewels, perfect for a child's imagination. As she told the tale, she became completely absorbed in it, making sound effects and humming a soundtrack as she dramatically revealed a drawing of a giant dragon. The otaku in her took over, and she found herself having an incredible amount of fun performing for the small audience. While Noah watched silently, his attendant Camilla was completely captivated. She gushed about how amazing the story and drawings were and begged Isabel to tell her if there was more. Isabel smiled, happy that Camilla enjoyed it, but gently reminded her that it was made especially for Noah. Camilla then turned to the little boy and encouraged him, asking if he wanted to see it again. To everyone's astonishment, Noah looked up and whispered his first word, "Again!" Isabel and Camilla were overjoyed. Camilla prompted him again, telling him to ask his mother to read it for him. Noah looked at Isabel with wide, shining eyes and said, "Fell." Hearing him call her mother brought tears to Isabel's eyes. In that moment, she made a solemn vow to protect and care for this precious child with all of her strength, ready to begin their new life together. A dramatic night at a grand mansion where a maid desperately calls out to the new Duchess, who is seen holding a large saw with an intense expression of anger and frustration. Shifting to a much happier scene, a young boy named Noah is overjoyed as he looks into a chest filled with a wonderful variety of toy building blocks. He excitedly calls for his mother, the Duchess, who watches him lovingly alongside her maid, both of them smiling at his pure delight. The Duchess reflects on how this world seems to have very little for children, lacking not just toys but even basic necessities. This realization inspired her to create the building blocks for Noah's education. A brief flashback shows she was so determined that she almost tried to cut the wood herself before being stopped, revealing that a stableman ultimately helped by cutting the wood into various shapes which she then carefully smoothed and painted. Now, she looks at Noah with anticipation, wondering what he will create. Seeing Noah a little unsure, the Duchess gently demonstrates how to play with the blocks. She stacks them together with a few clicks and proudly presents a charming little castle she has built. Noah quickly gets the hang of it and builds a small house, which his mother praises. The Duchess observes that since she introduced him to picture books, Noah has become more talkative and is learning new words rapidly, making her a very proud parent. Her thoughts then turn to her husband, the Duke, and she wonders why he treats their angelic son so harshly. She sees Noah as a perfect child who isn't spoiled and doesn't have strong dislikes, which makes the Duke's coldness even more confusing. She recalls a painful memory from a few weeks after her marriage into the divine family when she suggested the Duke speak with Noah. He had coldly dismissed her, questioning why he should ever talk to that child. The rejection left her so distraught that she spent the entire night venting her frustrations into her pillow. Aside from the strained relationship between the Duke and Noah, her new life has been peaceful, and her initial worries about upsetting her husband were unnecessary. Her marriage is one of distance, as her husband actively avoids her and they share no meals or time together. Despite this neglect, which she assumes makes her look like a poor, neglected wife to the staff, her life is surprisingly pleasant. The servants are unexpectedly kind to her, always making sure she is comfortable. She is provided with everything she needs, including new dresses, accessories, and 3 healthy meals a day, and she even has her own budget to use freely, making her feel as if she is in heaven. The Duchess cheerfully thinks that it's actually better when her husband is away, allowing her to relax while Noah takes a nap. In another part of the estate, the Duke is seen working at his desk. Later, her maid opens the curtains of their carriage, inviting the Duchess to look outside at the town. The Duchess is captivated by the view of the Duke's territory. She sees a beautiful town with colorful brick buildings and a lively market filled with fresh produce and charming goods, feeling as if she has stepped into a fairy tale. Inspired by the lovely town, the Duchess announces that there's something she wants to make and eagerly urges her maid to proceed. The maid is puzzled because they've already passed the dress and accessory shops, but the Duchess clarifies that their destination is a construction shop. When the Duchess steps out of her carriage, the local townspeople gather around, surprised to see the new Duchess for the first time. They whisper about how the Duke has remarried, commenting on her youth and beauty. The people are very friendly and express their deep gratitude for the Duke, telling her that they are able to live peacefully because of him and asking her to pass on their thanks. The Duchess is struck by how popular her husband is among his people, finding it difficult to reconcile with the way he treats her and Noah. She enters the construction shop and asks a worker if he's from the shop, while another man who seems to be the boss slams a door nearby. The worker initially says the boss isn't there, but the boss himself then appears before them. The Duchess gets straight to the point, asking the shop's boss if she can commission some work from him. She presents him with a template for a children's toy she has designed and asks if he would be able to make something similar for her. The boss initially brushes her off, saying they don't have time for small jobs because the rainy season is approaching. However, the Duchess cleverly counters by showing she has done her research, pointing out that construction work actually slows down during the rainy season due to dangerous conditions and lower quality welding. Surprised by her knowledge, the boss mentions the rumors he's heard about her being a spoiled and flashy noble, and she suggests that since his workers will soon be free, she can provide them with well-paying work. Feeling misunderstood, the boss retorts, asking if she thinks she can get them to work just by waving money around, as they have their own work to do even in the rainy season and don't have time for a noble's whims. The Duchess calmly concedes that it was rude to approach him without notice, but she also gently scolds him for judging her based on mere rumors. She then challenges his claim of being busy, revealing that she had reviewed industrial materials for the territory and knows that the employment rate during the rainy season is a significant problem. She correctly deduces that what his workers truly need isn't a small, temporary job but a source of continuous and substantial work. With a brilliant idea, the Duchess proposes that they open a children's goods store. She explains that a successful store would provide a steady supply of work. Acknowledging his dislike of nobles, she frames it as an opportunity to take money from the wealthy. She assures him that since it's her suggestion, she will handle the setup and use the support of the Duke's family to attract noble customers, ensuring the work will be high-paying. The shop owner is skeptical because he has never heard of children's toys before. The Duchess passionately explains that it's a perfect business opportunity, as the territory's wealthy nobles have plenty of money to spare and would gladly spend it on their beloved children and grandchildren. When he asks why she chose his specific shop, she tells him it was because she saw an illustration of his shop's beautiful furniture while researching materials. She elaborates that the furniture in the illustration had very soft and gentle lines, which convinced her that his craftsman would be perfect for creating safe and delicate toys for children. She admits that she wanted to make the toys herself but found the task too difficult for an amateur, humorously noting that she tends to end up with sharp objects if left to her own devices. As the shop owner considers her proposal, the maid quietly explains to him that the Duchess is from the Simmons family, a noble house from a neighboring territory notorious for its poverty. The Simmons land is barren and lacks any major industries, forcing them to rely on tax revenue that is barely enough to cover their own expenses. Understanding that the Duchess has faced her own share of struggles despite her noble status, the owner's perspective shifts. He admits her idea isn't bad and agrees to take on the work. The maid is overjoyed at the prospect of the Duchess managing a new children's goods shop, seeing it as a great idea. Back at the mansion, the Duchess thinks through the logistics. She worries what her husband might think if she opens a store without his permission, but her maid reassures her that it should be fine as long as she stays within her given budget and that the butler can handle all the arrangements. The Duchess feels a moment of doubt, acknowledging that she has never undertaken such a project before and cannot do it alone. Just then, Noah runs to her, proudly showing off a toy ship he has built with his blocks. Overcome with love and pride, the Duchess hugs him tightly, exclaiming how amazing and cute he is. This moment strengthens her resolve, as she realizes that by trying hard, she can help expand her son's incredible potential even further. Filled with new determination, the Duchess asks Noah if he would like to have even more toys. He enthusiastically agrees, and she vows to herself that she will do her absolute best for his sake. A young woman with long, wavy hair is deep in study within a vast library, her expression showing a hint of frustration as she cannot find the information she seeks. She sits with crossed arms amidst scattered books and scrolls, reflecting on her expectations for this new world. She had anticipated finding resin or details about magical plants and strange creatures but has been disappointed so far. She muses that while monsters do exist, they are merely harmless slimes that help keep the world clean by processing waste in an eco-friendly manner. As she decides to consider other options, she trips over a wooden plank left on the floor, exclaiming in surprise. Her initial annoyance quickly turns to focused curiosity as she examines the object, a sudden realization dawning on her face. Sometime later, a maid informs her that her son, Master Noah, has become completely engrossed in the wooden toys she found, which brings a look of pure delight to the young mother's face. She finds her young son, Noah, completely absorbed with his new toys and unresponsive to her calls. Determined to get him outside for some healthy sunlight, she kneels down to get his attention, and his face lights up with joy at the sight of the toys, melting his mother's heart. Seeing his excitement, she decides to use a different approach to lure him outside. With a confident smile, she asks Noah if he wants to see a hero's magical move, and his eyes widen, sparkling with anticipation. She begins her demonstration, instructing him to lift his head and extend his hands. She explains the process of sensing the magical power within one's body, starting with a feeling of warmth in the navel area. She then guides him to focus that energy, directing it into his palms and imagining it forming into a small, glowing orb. As she performs the spell, a beautiful, shimmering ball of light materializes between her hands. Noah and the maid are in absolute awe, with Noah exclaiming how incredible his mom is, which makes her feel a little embarrassed as she explains it is just a simple trick. The maid remarks that her lady resembles a main character, and the mother dismisses the praise, clarifying that it's just basic life magic, not powerful offensive magic. She thinks about how this world is one of swords and sorcery, but her spell is just a harmless bit of light. The narrative explains that in this world, nobles and most commoners can use simple life magic after a blessing ceremony. However, high-ranking nobles can wield advanced offensive magic. The emperor and the divine, ducal family are the most distinguished, with the first emperor having been blessed by the god of fire and the founder of the divine family blessed by the gods of wind and water. The current emperor, unable to use advanced magic, views the divine duke as a rival. Suddenly, Noah announces that he can feel warmth in his belly, hands, and head, just like his mother described. His mother is stunned, realizing her son learned to sense his magical energy just by hearing the instructions once, even though he hasn't had his blessing ceremony yet. Seeing his potential, she happily agrees to teach him how to control his magical energy, and they begin practicing together. Elsewhere in a stately office, two men hear the joyful sounds from outside. One man, an aide, informs the other, a stern-looking noble, that the lady is taking Master Noah on an outing. The noble refers to her dismissively as that woman, but his aide gently corrects him, saying it is better to show respect even in a formal marriage. The aide adds that the lady has been caring for Noah earnestly and seems very different from the rumors they had heard. The noble remains unconvinced, cynically stating that as a greedy woman, she must be aiming for something. Later, the young mother looks exhausted after a long day of playing with her energetic son, Noah. Just then her dedicated care team of maids appears, assuring her they will use all their skills to help her retain her beauty, for which she is grateful. She then shifts her focus back to her business plan for a children's supply store. Thanks to an associate named Walt, she is making good progress on creating picture books, having found promising illustrators and playwrights to create prototypes that even the adults found enjoyable. She also learns that the construction company has successfully created puzzles and building blocks that Noah greatly admired. Her next challenge is creating suitable tableware for children. She notes that the current children's tableware is made of heavy, breakable ceramic with small handles that are hard for children to grip. She needs a material that is lightweight, unbreakable, and easy to use, which has led her to search for good materials. This search led her to find information in the library about a dangerous plant that grows abundantly in the Simmons region. She sent an urgent letter to her family home for help but has been waiting nearly 2 weeks for a response, wondering if they are too busy. Just then, a maid announces that someone has arrived from her family home. The visitor is revealed to be Sir Oliver, and the young woman is shocked by his sudden, unannounced arrival. She rushes to meet him, asking if he has brought bad news. He looks at her grimly before questioning what she has gotten herself into. She asks if his visit is about the material she mentioned in her letter and eagerly asks for the results. With a severe and worried expression, Oliver reveals that the substance she asked about is incredibly dangerous and nearly destructive to anyone who handles it, demanding to know how his sister could have found something so terrifying. A man is seen apologizing for his earlier outburst as he speaks with a woman named Isabel, suggesting she take some time to rest before they discuss the material she wrote about in her letter. Later, Isabel is presented with a small white box and is told that the experiment she initiated was a great success. She sits across from her sister, Oliver, at a small tea table and examines a small, tile-like object from the box. Isabel notes that it looks like white porcelain and asks for permission to touch it, which Oliver grants. As Isabel holds the square, she is surprised by how sturdy and incredibly light it is. The scene shifts to an overgrown forest, explaining that this new material is derived from the sap of the bavro tree, which grows rapidly in the lands of Simons. These trees are a nuisance to the local residents because they multiply uncontrollably, are inedible with a bad taste, offer no medicinal value, and produce too much sap to be useful for construction. Isabel recalls finding information about this process on an old tablet in the library. The tablet described how the bavro tree's sap transforms into a fascinating new material when cooled to near-freezing temperatures, becoming a solid, white, lightweight, and durable substance. Back at the table, Isabel accidentally drops the small white tile, which clinks against the surface without breaking. Amazed that it's already frozen solid, she expresses her delight, believing the material is perfect. Oliver reassures her that it is not easily broken. Isabel excitedly holds up the tile, realizing they can use it to create safe and durable tableware for children, declaring it to be an absolutely ideal discovery. However, Oliver's expression turns serious as she explains the full extent of their experiments in Simons. The material proved to be a perfect new substance, withstanding impacts, pressure, tension, and even thermal shocks without deteriorating over time, which causes Isabel to look on in shock. Isabel's initial excitement about creating a new industry for their lands is quickly deflated by Oliver's grim reality check. Oliver explains that their family is too small and weak to resist if the state discovers their technology and decides to seize it, offering them a meaningless title while taking their land and resources. The situation is even more dire, as Oliver points out that scrutiny from other countries or extremist groups would be far worse than dealing with their own state, suggesting death might be a kinder fate. The two sisters whisper at the table, considering their options. Isabel suggests secretly manufacturing and selling the products themselves using only the people of Simons to prevent leaks. Oliver counters this, questioning if an unknown product would sell and noting that its superior performance would inevitably reveal it as a new material. Their maid, Camilla, then steps forward to intervene. Camilla respectfully points out the Simons family's dire financial situation, reminding them they cannot even afford a gardener or a cook and are already stretched too thin to take on a new manufacturing enterprise. She then proposes a solution. They should consult Duke Devine, whose power could shield them from the Emperor's interference. Oliver is intrigued by this suggestion, recognizing it as a viable option. Camilla explains that the country is split into 3 factions, with Duke Devine's faction being the strongest because it controls the Empire's military. Oliver agrees that the Duke's support would be a powerful deterrent against the Emperor, but Isabel looks horrified at the suggestion and declares it's impossible. Isabel is lost in thought, trying to find a way to change the subject without revealing the symbolic nature of her marriage, fearing it would devastate her father. Her thoughts are interrupted by a knock at the door, which she sees as a welcome distraction. A young boy named Noah enters, and Isabel warmly invites him in. Oliver observes her sister, Isabel, with Noah, remarking that she looks like an ordinary mother. Isabel seems slightly annoyed by the comment. Noah then greets Isabel politely, stumbling over his words in a way she finds endearing, and she silently congratulates him on his successful greeting. Oliver asks Isabel how she learned about the Bavro tree's properties. Isabel explains she found the information on an old wooden plaque in the library, which was likely written by a gardener over 100 years ago since paper was too expensive for commoners at the time. As Oliver examines the plaque with Noah, she comments on the strange script and difficult handwriting, wondering how Isabel managed to read it. Meanwhile, Isabel holds Noah and tells him that the new material will be used to make something for him, which he asks about with curiosity. Oliver expresses her relief, admitting she was concerned about the Duke, and notes that Isabel seems much more lively now. She shares that the Duke's marriage was delayed for a long time, and his first wife passed away shortly after giving birth to their son. Isabel laughs and mentions that the original Isabel wasn't interested in such gossip, which is why Oliver had to tell her to learn the customs. Isabel confesses she was unaware of the negative rumors surrounding the Duke's delayed marriage. Oliver then reveals another secret. The Duke's previous marriage was actually arranged by the Emperor. Oliver explains that the Emperor's intervention was likely inevitable because the divine family is crucial to the nation and was at risk without an heir. Isabel, however, silently considers the rumors about the current emperor and a manga she read, believing there might be another reason. She suspects the emperor's corrupt political dealings and the Duke's rumored dislike of women played a part, but she keeps these thoughts to herself. Holding Noah, Isabel reflects on the people's gratitude toward the Duke, concluding he isn't a complete tyrant and that there might be a chance for negotiation. She now understands why she was chosen as his second wife and feels it's right to express her gratitude, even if her request is likely to be rejected. With newfound resolve, she stands up, much to Oliver's surprise. Isabel confidently tells Oliver she is going to speak with the Duke and ask for his advice. Elsewhere, an attendant reports to the Duke, informing him that his wife has barely used her budget. The Duke, preoccupied with his work, dismisses the matter, assuming she's spent it all and telling the attendant to give her whatever she wants. The attendant clarifies that Isabel has spent very little and only on making toys for young Master Noah. He adds that she wishes to speak with the Duke to clarify her position. The Duke, finding this type of request troublesome, reluctantly agrees to see her since he has a meeting with Count Simmons anyway. He allows her in, and as she enters, he tells her to get straight to the point. Seated at his desk, the Duke looks sternly at Isabel and tells her to state her business quickly. A close-up of a man's clasped hands as he sits at his desk, stating that greetings are unnecessary. A wide view reveals him to be a Duke in his office, with his wife standing quietly by the entrance and his butler, Walt, nearby. The Duke, without looking up from his papers, asks what she wants, and her expression is one of calm determination as she prepares to speak. The Duchess suggests they discuss a private matter, but when she asks if it's all right to speak in front of the butler, the Duke dismisses her concern. He states that Walt has served him for years and there are no secrets between them. Understanding this, the Duchess looks him in the eye and directly asks if he dislikes women. The Duke appears slightly annoyed by the question and asks if she is unhappy with how he treats her. She quickly clarifies that she is not seeking his affection and that she has always understood their arrangement. She gracefully explains that she sees herself simply as a hired servant fulfilling the role of a wife to shield him from the pressures of the social world. Continuing her point, the Duchess expresses that she has always wondered what he gains from their marriage, as it seems to hold little benefit for him. She explains that her impoverished Simmons family is relieved of a financial burden, and she gets to live a comfortable life with beautiful clothes and no fear of hunger. In contrast, his advantages seem non-existent to her. She then brings up his past, mentioning that his first marriage was an order from the emperor and that after his first wife died, there was surely a great deal of competition among nobles for his hand. The Duke's expression darkens at her words, but she tells him he doesn't need to answer as she wasn't asking a question. Walt, the butler, then chimes in, explaining the Duke's political strategy. Marrying the daughter of a powerful noble for loyalty could have created conflict with other factions, and given the Duke's dislike for women, he would have struggled to treat any wife well. The Duchess smiles, realizing this is why she was chosen. She, a woman from the poor and undesirable Simmons family, brought no political advantage but also no harm, making her the perfect neutral choice. The Duchess explains her understanding of the situation, noting that her family was never aligned with any faction. She recognizes the new danger that other groups might try to use her to influence her husband. The Duke looks at her sharply and asks if she is threatening him. She immediately denies it, swearing she will never betray him or expect a physical relationship. Instead, she promises to perfectly play the role of the Duchess in public. To prove her sincerity, she offers to enter a magical contract, a magically binding oath of absolute obedience where breaking it means instant death. Walt is shocked by her extreme proposal, but the Duchess confirms she is completely serious. Intrigued, the Duke asks what she wants in return for such a vow. Her demand is simple: she wants protection for her family and their land. He assumes she needs money, but she clarifies that the danger comes from human threats. This alarms the Duke, who instantly suspects something has already happened. The Duchess notes his serious expression and says he must think a rival faction is involved. The Duke rubs his temple in frustration, reminding her that she just said no one wants their land. A bit flustered, she admits that a new situation has come up. The Duchess presents a small, glowing cube, explaining it's a new material developed in her family's region. She reveals that it starts as a liquid but hardens into an unbreakable substance, which her brother has tested extensively without fail. The Duke takes the cube and confirms it's incredibly durable. He decides to test its limits, first unleashing a powerful blast of ice magic that startles the Duchess but leaves the cube completely unscratched. He then summons a sword and strikes the cube with all his might, but the material only emits a faint cracking sound and remains perfectly intact. Convinced of the material's strength, the Duke acknowledges that she was telling the truth. He realizes the substance has massive potential depending on its use and asks what she plans to make with it. The Duchess reveals her surprisingly humble plan to make children's tableware. She explains that because the material is both lightweight and unbreakable, it would be perfect for children who tend to drop things. The butler silently muses that such a product would sell incredibly well to frustrated parents. The Duchess then shifts to the logistics of her business, apologizing for moving forward without his consultation. The Duke tells her there's no need to report such things and asks Walt to retrieve documents for a vacant property she found. The property is known for being a place where businesses fail quickly. The Duke tests her by asking how she would handle the situation. He explains that previous shops selling luxury goods like dresses and perfume were popular at first but failed after moving there, only regaining customers when they relocated again. The Duchess, having passed by the street before, quickly identifies the problem. The heavy carriage traffic and distant parking make it inconvenient for noble women in heavy dresses and heels to visit the store. Her solution is to convert the backyards of the property and its two neighbors into a large, shared parking lot by removing the fences between them. She explains that while one garden can only fit 4 carriages, a shared space would be more efficient and mutually beneficial for all 3 shops. Walt adds that a dedicated VIP entrance from the new parking lot would maintain a proper, high-class appearance. With the location problem solved, she then plans to negotiate the rent down, suggesting a 30% to 50% discount is possible due to the property's history of failure. After hearing her thorough and brilliant plan, the Duke simply looks at her and agrees to her initial request for protection. The Duchess is left completely stunned and speechless, as this was not the outcome she had expected from their conversation. The Duke explains his decision, stating that the unbreakable material is too dangerous to be left unchecked and will inevitably be sought for military purposes by the Emperor, which could disrupt the entire balance of power. This is why he accepts her magical contract, seeing it as a necessary precaution. He sighs, realizing the situation has become a complicated mess. In the background, a terrified Walt reflects on how frighteningly intelligent the Duchess is, wondering who could have ever dismissed her as a naive fool. Lord Theobald carefully inspects a piece of new tableware, remarking on how light it is despite its appearance, and the Duchess's sister agrees with him. She also points out that the items created for children are specially designed to be easy for them to hold. The scene widens to show a meeting where it's clear that the development of this new material has been progressing very smoothly over the past several months. A closer look reveals the thoughtful design of the children's items, such as utensils with thicker handles and cups featuring handles on both sides to ensure a secure grip for small hands. The Duchess's sister is seen mentioning to an older woman that Lord Theobald had come up with a completely unexpected suggestion following a magical contract. Later, the Duchess discusses the production plans with her husband, Lord Theobald, expressing her wish to keep the manufacturing process a secret between herself and a man named Simmons for the time being. As a fair trade, she offers her husband a portion of the new material's distribution rights. Lord Theobald accepts her proposal, agreeing to take charge of setting up the necessary production equipment and hiring trustworthy personnel to get the operation started. Lord Theobald contemplates the situation, recognizing that this new venture has significant value, while a tiny, anxious version of the Duchess worries if he is certain about his decision. He reflects on the material's origin, the Pablo tree, which until now was considered worthless and only accumulated disposal fees. He realizes the business's potential goes far beyond the material itself. Meanwhile, the Duchess nervously considers what percentage of the distribution rights to offer, mulling over a 30-70 or even a 20-80 split, aware that some people can be quite demanding when it comes to money. The Duchess sits with her young son, Noah, feeling a wave of gratitude that they were allowed to be present for Lord Theobald's investor briefing. She thinks about how exceptionally skilled managers like her husband can quickly spot good opportunities and make decisive choices, and she silently wishes him well. During the briefing, her sister proudly tells a guest that the brilliant idea for the children's tableware came from the Duchess, along with the toys and picture books. She gestures toward Noah, explaining that the tableware is just as simple and intuitive for a child to use as the toys are. The Duchess becomes flustered by the sudden attention and asks her sister not to direct the conversation toward her, while Noah looks on with a shy expression. Her sister playfully insists that watching the young master is all the proof they need. One of the guests observes that Lord Theobald, the Duchess's husband, appears to be a bit pale, and the Duchess wonders if she's just imagining things. Lord Theobald then captures everyone's attention by holding up a wine glass and revealing that it, too, is crafted from the new material, not from actual glass, which surprises another guest. The Duchess's sister elaborates on their discovery, explaining that the sap from the Pablo tree transforms into a transparent solid when heat is applied to it. The Duchess's sister humbly clarifies that her contribution was merely suggesting they try heating the sap, giving all the credit for the success to the dedicated efforts of Oliver and his team. The guest is thoroughly impressed by this innovative way of thinking. The Duchess further explains that the transparent material becomes solid once it cools down and is just as strong as its opaque counterpart. As the conversation continues, the Duchess comically feels left out, noticing that no one is talking to her anymore. The focus then shifts when Lord Theobald turns to his wife's sister to inquire about how they plan to manage any waste materials from the production process. The sister confidently answers that a special slime will be used to break down any waste, a method that also enables more detailed and intricate processing of the material. Lord Theobald is impressed by their progress, remarking on how much they've managed to accomplish in such a short period. His wife's sister credits the Duke's help as being crucial to their success, but she emphasizes that the most vital element was the richness of her sister's creative ideas. She warmly observes that since marrying Lord Theobald, her sister seems to be truly full of life. She then expresses a tinge of regret that she cannot attend an upcoming event because of her duties at the Academy. The Duchess, holding Noah close, simply smiles and says that it is about time. The scene shows two people standing together as it's announced that the renovations and preparations for the new store have been successfully finished. The Duchess stands before her esteemed craftsmen and artists, expressing her profound gratitude for their tireless work. She shares her overwhelming joy, stating that the wonderful collection of items they gathered is all thanks to their incredible dedication. With a bright smile, she announces that the very next day will be the pre-opening of her very own shop. The craftsmen reassure the Duchess, telling her that she can now rest easy as the store staff will take care of everything from this point forward. At the grand entrance of the toy treasure chest, the staff extends a warm and enthusiastic welcome to the arriving customers, expressing their delight in having them visit the new shop. The shop's interior is a breathtaking sight, with the ceiling and walls painted to resemble a calm blue sky, creating a whimsical atmosphere. Jigsaw puzzles and picture books are elegantly arranged on staircase-style shelves as if they were pieces of art. Other shelves hold neatly organized boxes containing 3D puzzles and building blocks. The invited guests, mothers and their children alike, look around in complete awe, captivated by the beautiful and absolutely charming environment. The guests are fascinated by the unique items, with some curious about what a picture book is and others wondering how to play with the various toys. A child cautiously whispers to their parent, asking for permission to touch a toy and worrying that it might break. The Duchess observes the positive initial reactions, thinking to herself that the first step is often the most difficult, but she feels confident that everything is under control. A helpful staff member encourages the guests, inviting them to freely try out the toys for themselves. The Duchess turns to her son, Noah, and with an encouraging smile, tells him that it is his time to shine. Filled with confidence, Noah declares, "Okay," and walks toward a play area where other children are gathered. He sits down and begins to skillfully assemble a structure with the building blocks, effortlessly demonstrating how to play with them as the other children watch with growing interest. After proudly displaying his finished block creation with a triumphant "ta-da," Noah moves on to a picture book, showing it to the other children. He enthusiastically invites everyone to join in the fun, and his infectious excitement successfully captures the attention of the other children, who eagerly gather around him. The Duchess clenches her fists in a gesture of victory, celebrating the major success of Noah's demonstration as the other mothers and their children look on with happy and impressed expressions. High above on a balcony, Lord Theobald watches the entire scene unfold. A flashback reveals that his attendant had foreseen this possibility and had taken the initiative to get permission for Noah to attend the pre-opening before his master departed for the castle. Lord Theobald had simply given his consent with the words, "Do as you please," a subtle way he communicates from a distance. A thought bubble reveals someone's internal surprise at the Duke's seemingly relaxed attitude, wondering why he isn't more concerned about the safety of his one and only heir at a public event. However, it's clarified that all attendees are trusted, invited guests and that Noah is under the constant supervision of reliable servants. Two mothers quietly comment that the children are having a wonderful time, but the adults are starting to feel a bit bored. The Duchess quickly picks up on this with a swift glance and immediately starts planning her next move. The Duchess graciously invites the waiting mothers to join her for tea in an adjoining room. As they enter, the women are stunned to find themselves in a room that appears to be constructed entirely from massive panes of glass, something none of them have ever seen before. The Duchess explains that the room is actually made from the new, innovative material. One guest, impressed, remarks that such luxury is to be expected from the divine ducal house. With a warm smile, the Duchess tells them to relax and enjoy themselves, as the transparent walls allow them to comfortably watch over their children while they play. One mother expresses her immense relief, sharing that she never thought she could relax like this since it is usually impossible to sit down for a cup of tea when you have little children who get bored so easily. At that very moment, her daughter runs up to her asking to be carried. As the mother lifts her child, the little girl accidentally knocks a teacup off the table, sending it plummeting to the floor. The mother instantly panics, horrified at the thought of causing a mishap in the Duchess's brand new store. A staff member quickly rushes to their side, first checking if the child is hurt or if their clothes are stained. The mother, however, is consumed with worry about the fallen tableware. The staff member calmly picks up the teacup, showing it to the mother and explaining that because the tableware is made from the newly developed material, it won't get a single scratch from the fall. Upon hearing this, the mother and another guest, who seems to have had past experiences with breaking expensive dishes, excitedly declare their intention to buy the durable sets. The staff member happily points them toward the dishware section of the store. The children are seen having a wonderful time at a small table, using the new, unbreakable tableware. The Duchess watches them with a gentle and fulfilled smile. As evening falls, the scene shows the beautiful exterior of the shop, and a message announces that the grand opening is just 1 week away. The Duchess reflects on the day, feeling glad she gave it her all and looks forward to welcoming visitors again. After the successful pre-opening, the team gathers for a meeting while Noah rests in another room. The Duchess expresses her gratitude to everyone for their hard work and proposes they review the day while awaiting the final sales report. They note that the flow of customers was excellent, but the shelves are now noticeably bare. This leads them to conclude that they should probably hire more staff dedicated to restocking the products. The Duchess celebrates the positive feedback on the store's parking lot, which was highly praised for being user-friendly. A diagram illustrates the large lot that serves 3 neighboring shops, featuring a special VIP entrance that was once the back door. Another layout shows how the space was carefully planned to maximize the number of parking spots, incorporating a shared turning area for carriages and painted arrows on the ground to direct the flow of traffic smoothly. An associate remarks how impressive it was that she managed to secure such a perfect property for the shop. A flashback takes us to a few days after the magical contract was negotiated, revealing the Duchess's sheer astonishment as she reviewed the property agreement. The property, which her husband had initially presented as a test, was being leased to her for an unbelievable 1/3 of its original rental price. On top of that, the contract granted permission for major renovations, including the backyard, which provided the perfect solution to the parking problem. She realizes this incredible opportunity is all thanks to her husband, though she still doubts it stems from any feelings of love. Continuing the flashback, an attendant presents the contract to the Duchess on her husband's behalf. He mentions that the master had initially thought it was unnecessary for him to get involved in her business. However, he is now personally overseeing the new materials, a project the attendant believes the master values very highly. The Duchess is shown looking completely stunned and flustered by her husband's sudden and unexpected level of cooperation. Returning to the present, Noah wakes from his nap and joyfully runs into his mother's arms. She embraces him lovingly, asking if he had a difficult day and if he is feeling tired. With his eyes sparkling with happiness, Noah exclaims that the day was incredibly fun, lots and lots. For the Duchess, this pure expression of joy feels far more meaningful and rewarding than any spoken words of love could ever be. Beaming with happiness, Noah looks up at his mother and says, "Mommy, I really love you." Overwhelmed with emotion, the Duchess pulls him into a tight hug, feeling in her heart that his love and happiness are the greatest reward she could ever receive. An attendant hurries in, calling for his lady as he holds the completed sales report. He announces that the sales have far surpassed all of their expectations. However, this triumphant moment is cut short as the Duchess and her team gaze at the nearly empty shelves and displays around the store, realizing with a jolt of shock that they have hardly any products left in stock. The scene dramatically shifts to the Graninish Empire, where Emperor Nerodias receives news of an incredible new material discovered within the Simmons territory. He reacts with fury, demanding to know how this could have happened. An aide informs him that the manufacturing process is being guarded as a secret. The Emperor rashly declares that they should just go and seize the technology, suggesting they could silence any opposition by simply promoting Count Simmons to a margrave. However, a dark-haired advisor calmly warns him that acting so hastily would be a dangerous mistake. When the Emperor learns that the Duke Divine family is supporting this new business, his rage intensifies and he yells, "It's him! Again!" He seethes with anger over the Duke's constant interference. His advisor, hiding a sinister smirk, thinks to himself, "Why won't he die already?" but outwardly maintains a composed demeanor. He placates the enraged ruler, advising him not to rush and to allow the situation time to unfold. He calmly tells the dear Emperor to take it easy as their long, menacing shadows stretch across the stone floor. The lady of the house looks deeply troubled as she reflects on her new business venture. While her treasure toy box store has successfully opened and is bustling with customers, she has noticed a problem. A close-up on her worried face reveals her inner thoughts as she questions why most of the customers buying toys are boys, even though the store is stocked with puzzles, picture books, and cute products designed to appeal to girls. Lost in thought, she realizes that in her focus on making the young boy Noah happy, she overlooked this crucial aspect of the business. She understands that to truly capture the interest of girls, the store needs something more, something that expresses beauty and cuteness on a much deeper level. A flashback reminds her that the first person to get bored in the store was a little girl, reinforcing her desire to make the store enjoyable for everyone. Suddenly, a brilliant idea flashes in her mind. She visualizes a new kind of toy that would allow girls to enjoy dressing up a doll according to their own tastes. She pictures a customizable teddy doll available in a wide variety of colors, a toy that would let creativity flourish without directly competing with established clothing and jewelry stores. Her plan becomes more detailed as she thinks through the logistics. The dolls themselves would be manufactured in an orphanage as a project to support them, with illustrations showing nuns carefully crafting the plush toys. Meanwhile, the doll clothes would be created through a collaboration with local clothing stores, and tiny accessories would be made with jewelry shops. This clever strategy would support the community and avoid business conflicts. She even envisions a future where popular characters from their picture books could inspire role-playing costumes, potentially elevating the brand to luxury status. The story then shows the success of her collaborative efforts. A rugged man named Yves, with a scar on his face, arrives with a large crate, announcing an additional shipment. The lady thanks him warmly as he explains their stock is already running out. Yves expresses his deep gratitude, explaining that their partnership, which was initially only for the rainy season, has provided work for skilled people who couldn't work on site due to injuries or disabilities, giving them a new place to contribute. The scene shifts to a conversation with a talented painter named Arnold. He shows the lady some of his stunning new designs while expressing his own heartfelt thanks. He recalls a time when art supplies were an impossible luxury for commoners, and making a living as a painter was just a dream. He explains that without a wealthy patron, artists like him could only afford second-hand, worn-out supplies. Arnold continues to explain how the lady changed his life, providing not just financial support and high-quality art supplies but also a stable income that allows him to live his dream of being a full-time painter. He's so passionate that he's been working for 3 days without sleep, prompting another person to scold him to rest. He excitedly shows the lady his current project, a picture book about someone becoming the king of bandits, which was inspired by her own story about a pirate king. The lady smiles, reflecting that the success of the store is a result of everyone's combined efforts. She compares their collaboration to cooking, where the same ingredients can lead to wonderfully different results depending on who is preparing the dish. She feels that even though her original story has been changed, the outcome is enjoyable, and she is the one who should be thanking all of them. Eve praises her incredible talent for leading people, stating that listening to her idea was the best decision he ever made. Humbly, the lady replies that her only motivation was to make Noah happy. Later that evening, after putting Noah to bed, she returns to her room to continue her work. She sits at her desk and begins brainstorming new product ideas, considering the appeal of launching limited edition items to generate more excitement for the store. While exploring the manor, she comes across a beautifully crafted piano. As she presses a key, a lovely sound fills the room, and she notes that it is perfectly tuned. This brings back memories of her childhood when her mother used to teach her how to play. A sad note reveals that after her mother passed away, they couldn't afford a tuner, and the piano fell silent. Feeling a mix of nostalgia and longing, she looks around the empty room and decides to play, thinking no one will notice. She sits down, and her fingers gracefully touch the keys. She begins to play and sing a powerful and iconic song, a legendary anime opening theme filled with tales of love, dreams, and miracles. The music tells a story of companions uniting against their enemies and soaring freely through the skies, painting a picture of a world that is one big treasure island. As the final notes fade, she is startled to see the butler standing nearby, having listened to her entire performance. He is visibly moved by the music, remarking that he has never heard a song with such a unique style before, and he asks if she composed it herself. Flustered and caught, she jumps up from the piano bench in surprise. Embarrassed, she quickly apologizes for playing the piano without permission. The butler kindly reassures her, stating that everything in the manor is at her disposal. He then casually wonders why such a magnificent instrument is kept in a small, unused room instead of the main salon where guests could enjoy it. The butler then reveals the piano's history. It was a keepsake from the master's former wife, Noah's real mother, who brought it with her when she married into the family. Since her passing, no one else has played it, and he only tunes it occasionally as a hobby. The lady is struck with horror as she realizes she has played a cherished memento of Noah's mother. Her mind races, imagining this as the beginning of a classic evil stepmother story that leads to a terrible end. Panic sets in as she imagines how Noah will react to her playing his mother's piano without permission. She remembers that her primary goal in this new life was to avoid death, a goal she had almost forgotten in the face of Noah's innocence. In a desperate move, she asks the butler for a soft cloth, perhaps intending to wipe away any evidence of her playing. The butler looks on, completely bewildered by her sudden change in behavior. To her complete astonishment, the butler smiles and suggests that Noah would actually be very happy. He explains that Noah loves her very much, and he believes it would bring the boy immense joy to hear her play his mother's piano, filling the house with beautiful music once more. He suggests this act would help them feel like a true family. The lady is deeply touched by his kind and unexpected words. His reassurance leads her to ponder the situation more deeply. She thinks about what an amazing and nearly perfect child Noah is, which makes her question the original story she knows. She wonders why her character in that story, Isabel, hated Noah so much, and why the Lord, Theobald, was so distant from his own son. Suddenly, a fragmented and confusing memory flashes in her mind. It's a scene of conflict she doesn't recognize, with a voice crying out, "Why didn't you do anything?" She is left confused and unsettled by this unfamiliar vision. Her thoughts are abruptly interrupted when a servant rushes in to announce that the Lord has arrived and is requesting to see her immediately. The narrator notes that the original story she remembers contained very few scenes showing the relationship between Isabel and Theobald, making the summons all the more mysterious. She finds Lord Theobald waiting for her, his expression serious. He informs her that they have received an invitation to a party at the Imperial Palace. He adds that the invitation came directly from the Emperor himself, and as the lady looks on with a worried expression, she understands that her life is about to become significantly more complicated due to a grand banquet being held inside the Imperial Palace where Lord Noah's mother is currently present. Isabel reflects that the invitation came directly from the emperor, which meant they had to rush to prepare her dress. As she endures the pressure from her husband during their long journey to the capital, she looks at her reflection and feels that she truly looks like a villain in every sense of the word. Upon their arrival, Isabel and her husband enter the bustling hall, where she is greeted as the stunning and youthful new wife. However, she immediately becomes the subject of cruel whispers among the other guests. They gossip about her being from a bankrupt aristocratic family and speculate that she may have sold her body to survive. Others murmur about her bad reputation with men and her demanding, extravagant nature. These harsh words trigger a painful memory for Isabel, reminding her of her debutante ball when a man crudely asked if she would sleep with any man. Shaken by the gossip and her memories, Isabel nervously wonders how the original Isabel she now embodies used to behave, only recalling that she was a bit spoiled. Her thoughts are interrupted when a man approaches her, having heard about the unique business she started. She explains that her store specializes in baby products, selling toys, picture books for children, tableware, and more. The man also mentions hearing that she developed a new material and turns to Lord Theobald, stating that he has received news about its properties. As the conversation continues, other men gather around, forming a men's society that completely disregards Isabel. They discuss how Lord Theobald was the financial backer for the venture and express their own interest in it. Feeling ignored by the men and her husband, Isabel resolves that all she has to do is smile and trust that her husband will not act recklessly. A moment later, another lady compliments her on her stunning dress. Isabel explains that she chose the color because it matches Noah's eyes, prompting the lady to admire their strong bond, noting that the color also matches Lord Theobald's eyes. As Isabel thinks about how an entire week has passed without seeing Noah, she feels a sense of disaster and begins to daydream, wondering if he feels lonely. She quickly snaps out of it, telling herself there is no time for daydreaming as she still has duties to attend to. Just then, His Majesty Emperor Nerodius makes his grand entrance. Isabel remembers him from the manga as a cruel and arrogant monster whom she could never bring herself to admire. She observes his condescending gaze and domineering aura as everyone bows, honoring him as the son of the empire. The emperor then begins a speech about flowers that is so profoundly dull that Isabel finds her brain has completely stopped processing his words. After the speech, Isabel recalls that while her own debutante ball began with a dance, the custom in the imperial palace is to start the banquet with a toast. As waiters circulate with trays of champagne, she and Lord Theobald each take a glass. The emperor raises his glass to begin the toast, and as he does, he looks directly at Isabel and gives her a chilling, unsettling smile. The look on his face triggers a disturbing memory from the manga, where it was mentioned that the emperor's son, Ines, killed his own father and later assassinated Duke Theobald using the very same poison. A horrifying realization dawns on Isabel as she connects the dots. The Duke's cause of death in the story was poisoning. As the entire hall raises their glasses for a toast, her eyes fixate on the wine in her husband's hand. He is about to drink it and she panics, knowing she has to stop him. Thinking quickly, she asks Lord Theobald to hold her glass for a moment, creating a clever excuse that her hair has gotten tangled in her necklace and she needs her hands free to fix it. While he waits impatiently, telling her to hurry, her mind races for a solution. She remembers that the poison described in the manga was not instantaneous but required repeated doses to be lethal, and a dreadful fear creeps in that he may have already started consuming it in the past. Her heart pounds in her chest as she weighs her options, even considering pretending to lose her balance and shattering the glass. She dismisses the idea as an act unbecoming of a duchess but remains firm in her resolve that she cannot let him drink the poisoned wine. She takes her glass back from him and in a swift, subtle movement, she swaps her glass with his, taking the poisoned one for herself. She tells herself that this poison only becomes effective after being consumed multiple times, and since she has most likely never taken it before, she will be fine. She then offers her original, untainted glass to her husband, calmly pointing out that since she has already placed her lips on it, it is now hers to give. Lord Theobald looks at her and asks if she does not like wine, while she nervously wonders what to do with the poisoned glass in her hand. In a surprising show of kindness, he tells her it's okay and that she shouldn't force herself, offering to drink it for her. He reminds her of the palace rule that forbids leaving any served food or drink unfinished, which makes her see a good side to him she hadn't noticed before. However, Isabel knows that if he drinks the poison, her efforts will be meaningless, so she insists that she will drink it herself. A thought then crosses her mind from when she had a small sip earlier. She remembers thinking that the wine would be better if it were colder. Seizing this idea, She tells herself she will not let this stumble pass without gaining something in return. She turns to Lord Theobald with a new plan to gather evidence, explaining that she doesn't handle alcohol well. She asks if he can freeze part of the wine to make ice cubes, so it will be ice cold and she can drink it slowly. Later, as the terrifying banquet finally comes to an end, Isabel feels an overwhelming sense of relief. She is proud that she did her best and is thankful that at least her health seems fine. With the ordeal behind her, all she wants is to return home as soon as possible to see her little angel Noah, to pat his head and spoil him. But as she walks toward the waiting carriage, a wave of nausea suddenly washes over her. Her head begins to spin violently, and she stumbles, confused and terrified by what is happening to her body. She collapses into Lord Theobald's arms, weakly telling him that it seems there was poison inside the wine after all. As she loses consciousness, he cries out her name in shock and horror at a tender memory of young Master Noah, who is happily surrounded by people offering him gifts. One person presents him with candy while another shows off a newly made toy, and a third offers beautiful flowers from the garden. Noah joyfully accepts the toy, shouting with delight. The scene then shifts to the present, where the woman is feeling very sick. Her body feels incredibly heavy and a wave of nausea washes over her as she thinks about both her mother and young Master Noah. Her discomfort quickly turns to panic as she realizes she might have been poisoned. She remembers reading in a manga that this particular poison was supposed to be slow-acting, requiring several doses before taking full effect, allowing time for a saint to appear and provide a cure. A terrible fear grips her as she considers the possibility that the poison's properties have changed, making it deadly from the very first dose. She desperately thinks that she doesn't want to die yet. Just as her panic peaks, a man with a deep voice asks if she is awake. She opens her eyes to find herself in bed and is startled to see the Lord standing in her room. He calmly tells her there is no need to get up and that the doctor is present. The Lord asks if she can remember what happened and explains that she collapsed on the way back from the banquet. He then confirms her fears, stating that, as they suspected, the wine she drank had been poisoned. The revelation makes her immediately recall the iced water she had consumed. The Lord reassures her that the poisoned wine was stored very carefully. He explains that while some tests have been conducted, there are still unknown elements, so it will be sent to the divine territory for a more thorough analysis by a trusted source. The woman expresses her gratitude, feeling surprised that he believed her so easily. He then asks how she is feeling, and she tells him that she thinks she's fine now, as the dizziness, nausea, and fever have all disappeared. The Lord seems pleased by this news, though the atmosphere feels a bit awkward to her. She internally wonders how he knew the wine was poisoned, knowing she can't reveal her secret that she learned about it from reading a manga. The Lord explains that he had an instinct that something was wrong and then he heard laughter around him. He reveals that he saw the Emperor looking directly at him with a suspicious smile, confirming his suspicions that the Emperor was behind it. He admits he wasn't completely certain it was poison but knew that waiting for something to happen would be too late. Suddenly, his expression becomes intense and scary as he turns to her and demands to know why she drank the poison. The woman is terrified by his sharp gaze, finding it ironic that the man who saved her is now looking at her so frighteningly. With a look of genuine pain, the Lord tells her that she would have died. This surprises her, making her wonder if he is actually worried about her. He presses on, asking why she would go to such lengths for him. She feels an immense sense of guilt, as if she cheated by using her knowledge from the manga about the poison and how to neutralize it, but she cannot explain this to him. When he asks for her reason, she decides to tell him that she did it for Simmons and everyone else, and most importantly, she did it for Noah. Her answer seems to catch him off guard for a moment before he tells her that he can't let her die because she is the only hope that they all have, causing her to blush and feel flustered. The conversation then turns to the magic contract between them, and she realizes that her own life is included in its protection, meaning her death would have violated its terms. She even has a fleeting, strange thought about whether she was originally meant to be his assassin and if drinking the poison herself allowed her to escape that fate. The Lord decides they should discuss the contract and potentially reconsider its terms at a later time. A few days pass, and the woman recalls her recovery period. The Lord had forbidden her from leaving the palace until she was fully healed, delaying her departure. It has now been 3 weeks since she left the divine territory and has been away from Noah. She knows the journey from the capital back home is about 5 days long. Throughout the trip, she endures the harsh shaking of the carriage and its hard seats, with the Lord's constant and somewhat pressuring presence beside her. All she can think about is her reunion with Noah, imagining seeing him again very soon. The Lord mentions that he could have returned to the manor before her but insisted on staying by her side. She finds his loyalty a bit much, thinking to herself that she would have been more relaxed if he had gone on ahead. Finally, their carriage pulls up to the magnificent divine manor. An attendant informs her that the journey was long and she must be tired, suggesting she rest for the day. However, the woman feels she has no time to rest, as she is desperate to see Noah. As they enter, the entire household staff is lined up to welcome them home. The woman apologizes for her delayed return while scanning the crowd, her heart sinking a little when she doesn't see Noah among them. Just then, a small figure dashes forward, calling out for his ame. Overjoyed, the woman cries out Noah's name and runs to him. She sweeps him into a tight embrace, apologizing over and over for taking so long to return while telling him how happy she is to be back. Noah, with tears streaming down his face, welcomes her back and clings to her desperately, letting out a long, emotional wail for his mother, as she holds him and looks at his tear-stained face with deep affection and concern. A woman named Camilla stands with a pained expression as the sound of intense crying fills the air. The source of the sorrow is a small boy named Noah, who is shown in another frame wailing with his whole body. Camilla rushes to his side, asking what is wrong with the distressed child. The scene reveals that this has been a recurring issue for several days, as Noah cries relentlessly until he falls into an exhausted sleep, sometimes becoming so upset that he cannot even be held, while a concerned maid notes the Lord's intense gaze upon them. Camilla lovingly cradles Noah in her arms, trying to comfort him as she asks what is wrong and if he is hurt anywhere, while he just sobs into her embrace. In the background, a group of servants, including an older woman and a butler, watch with deep concern. A small thought bubble shows a maid exclaiming that this is the first time such a thing has happened, while another adds that because of this, they have no idea how to help the poor boy. A man with glasses, who appears to be an aide, stands beside Camilla and offers his theory on the situation. He suggests that Noah's distress might stem from a deep-seated fear that Camilla, his mother, would never return. This fear was likely amplified because she had been away for the longest time ever, and her return was significantly delayed after she was poisoned, making this separation especially difficult for the young child. With tears welling in his own eyes, Noah looks up at his mother and manages to call out to her between his sorrowful hiccups. Seeing her son's pain, Camilla's expression softens with empathy, and she too begins to cry as she whispers an apology to him. The next image gives a heart-wrenching close-up of Noah's face, completely overwhelmed by tears as he rubs his eyes with his tiny fists. His face is flushed from crying, and he continues to hiccup, lost in his sadness against a sparkly, emotional backdrop that highlights the intensity of the moment. A powerful realization dawns on Camilla, her expression shifting to one of intense determination. She reflects on how she had always viewed Noah as a perfect, angelic child who never asked for anything and seemed to dislike nothing. This sudden understanding of her misconception leads to a dramatic, silent scream, a powerful emotional outburst as she comprehends the truth of her son's feelings. Camilla's inner thoughts reveal the depth of her realization as she wonders if this is the very first time Noah has ever been held with such raw emotion and comfort. She comes to the painful conclusion that the constant smile everyone saw on his face was not genuine but a mask he wore to please others. She continues to piece together the truth, thinking about how Noah always smiled simply because it made everyone else laugh and brought him praise. She questions if all this time he was silently enduring his true feelings and never asking for anything he wanted for himself, just to live up to the image of the perfect child. A sorrowful image of Noah appears in her mind as Camilla fully understands that all her son ever wanted was to be loved for who he truly is. Overcome with regret and love, she clutches him tightly in her arms and repeatedly apologizes for not seeing his silent struggle sooner. Noah looks up at his mother, his face still streaked with tears, as she encourages him to tell her what he wants and what he truly wishes to do. With a fierce, loving look in her eyes, Camilla tells him that he has absolutely nothing to apologize for and that he can say anything that is on his mind. As she holds him in a warm, reassuring embrace, she promises him that no one will ever hate him for expressing himself, especially for saying he doesn't like something, giving him the freedom to finally be himself. With tears streaming down her face, Camilla looks at her son with overwhelming love and declares that he is the most precious thing she has in the entire world. She continues, her voice filled with emotion, telling him that she loves him more than anything. The final panel shows a close-up of Noah's wide, tear-filled eye, perfectly reflecting his mother's emotional and heartfelt confession. Camilla passionately reassures Noah, telling him she is sorry she was late in coming back and makes a solemn promise that she will never be apart from him again. She explains that it would be impossible for her to leave such a sweet and smart child whom she loves so much, promising that she will always and forever be with him. She then adds a light-hearted condition to her promise, joking that she will stay by his side forever unless he specifically tells her he doesn't want her around. She even playfully adds that she'll stick with him even if his future wife doesn't approve, showing her unwavering commitment to him. In the background, a few onlookers, including 2 men and a smiling woman, have witnessed this touching reunion. The scene then shifts to a grand, ornate palace under a cloudy sky. Later, inside Noah's room, Camilla stands with a maid as they watch over the sleeping boy. Noah is resting peacefully in his bed, having finally found comfort. The maid notes that he fell asleep the moment he stopped crying and will surely sleep soundly until the morning. Outside Noah's room, Camilla confronts the man referred to as the Lord, asking if he waited there all this time just to speak with her. The Lord advises her to go and rest, reminding her that her own health is still in a delicate state. He then states that he is not naive enough to be emotionally swayed by such a scene, a comment which is noted as a significant step forward for him personally. From behind, Camilla addresses the Lord, listing his positive attributes, including his work, his fair treatment of the Simmons family, and the high regard in which people hold him. She explains that through observing all of this, she has reached a conclusion about his character. An intense look on his face, the Lord listens as she tells him he is not a shallow nobleman who simply inherited his title, nor is he someone who is clueless about the feelings of others. Camilla then respectfully asks for his forgiveness for what she is about to say next. A maid watches the exchange, understanding that there must be certain complicated circumstances surrounding the Lord's relationship with Noah. Camilla admits that she doesn't know what these circumstances are, and the Lord coldly states that he is not interested in them. Despite his dismissal, Camilla firmly says, "But," to continue her point. Camilla passionately pleads her case, explaining that for a small child, a parent is their entire world. She earnestly begs him to understand the gravity of his role in Noah's life. The scene shifts to an empty, quiet study filled with books and a desk, where Camilla's voice continues, urging him to think again about the true meaning of being a father. Inside the study, the man with glasses who had earlier comforted Camilla watches the Lord and observes that she said exactly what needed to be said, though he seems to hesitate with a quiet, "but." The Lord stands with his back to him, looking out the window, and finally admits that Camilla is right, acknowledging that he understands her point very well. Waking up in bed, a woman named Isabel is overwhelmed with regret for the terrible things she has done, as flashbacks reveal she had a harsh confrontation with her husband. She feels she went too far with her words, especially since she knows nothing about his circumstances, and remembers telling him she wasn't even interested. Isabel lies in bed worrying that she made her husband so angry he might divorce her, which would mean she could no longer be a mother to a young boy named Noah. Her thoughts are interrupted when a woman introduces herself as Miranda, her new personal maid, bringing Isabel a glimmer of hope. The assignment of a personal maid makes Isabel think her husband doesn't intend to divorce her after all, and she feels a wave of relief. She graciously welcomes Miranda and feels determined to make up for her husband's loneliness, her day brightening with the thought of playing with Noah. Miranda then informs her that the Lord wishes to visit her room during Noah's nap time. The scene shifts to a heartwarming moment where Isabel is sharing a meal with Noah, feeling that the food tastes so much more delicious simply because she is eating it with him. Noah happily agrees, exclaiming that it is very yummy. After they finish eating, Noah excitedly tells his mother about a new toy he received from someone named Eve and also shows her a book adorned with flowers, asking her to read him stories. Isabel is filled with an immense sense of joy, feeling as if the very essence of her son's happiness is flowing through her body. Later, while holding a small box, Isabel wishes that her current happiness will never end. The story then cuts to a serious discussion where her husband, a man with glasses named Dr. Moore, and another attendant named Walt are examining a poison found in some wine. Dr. Moore explains that the poison has no immediate effect and its toxicity is extremely weak, which Isabel overhears, feeling relieved that they are not discussing a divorce. Dr. Moore continues, explaining that the poison is dangerous because it accumulates in the body, and while a single dose poses a gradual risk, several doses will undoubtedly lead to death. An older man adds that a perfectly healthy person might not show severe symptoms for about 10 years, which is what makes the poison so difficult to detect, and it's revealed that the Lord himself consumed it once. Isabel has a shocking realization that this poison was the cause of the Duke's death in the original manga story, an event that would have ultimately led to Noah going to war. The men conclude that there is no antidote and even holy water has little effect, their only hope being a saintess who can purify it, but she is currently only a toddler, just a year or two younger than Noah. Horrified by the fact that the poison is still in her body and the saintess is just a baby who cannot use her powers yet, Isabel panics. She envisions the saintess as she will appear 15 years in the future, but the reality that she is currently a helpless child is too much to bear, and she collapses in shock. Dr. Moore explains that Isabel's symptoms after the banquet were not a direct result of the poison but rather side effects, suggesting she has a body that is highly sensitive to medication. This triggers a memory from Isabel's previous life, where a nurse noted that she was the type of person who experienced chemotherapy side effects very quickly, making her realize this unfortunate trait has carried over into her new life. The Lord questions Dr. Moore about the difficulty in creating an antidote, and the doctor explains that the poison contains many unknown components. It seems to be a new kind of plant-based poison made from a plant they cannot identify. He advises Isabel to keep holy water with her at all times for protection, as her symptoms have subsided for now. Isabel suddenly recalls a detail from the manga, remembering the poison is called black butterfly nectar and is made from the black butterfly flower, which grows in a secret garden in the imperial palace. When she mutters the name black butterfly, Dr. Moore says he has never heard of such a plant, so Isabel quickly pretends she just remembered something unimportant. Needing to share her knowledge without revealing its source, Isabel invents a story about finding a wooden tablet during her research. She claims the tablet described a secret royal garden within the imperial palace that contains a black, butterfly-shaped flower known as the black butterfly flower. Her husband is immediately skeptical, dismissing the idea as a baseless fantasy written by a commoner who couldn't possibly know about a restricted royal garden. Isabel insists that they should consider all leads, and Dr. Moore supports her, pointing out that some nobles are passionate plant collectors. Dr. Moore explains that these collectors sometimes even create new, modified plant species, so it is entirely possible for there to be plants that are unknown to the public. His reasoning persuades the Lord, who agrees to investigate the lead and gently tells Isabel to go get some rest while he handles it, just as young Noah is seen peeking from behind a curtain. Noah then comes running into the room, and his maid hurries after him, apologizing profusely because he woke from his nap earlier than usual and ran to find his mother. Isabel comforts Noah, and the maid explains he normally sleeps much later. Isabel lovingly asks Noah how old he is, and he proudly holds up 3 fingers, declaring that he is 3 years old. Filled with joy, he then asks his mother if they can go play outside together. As Isabel, Noah, and his maid prepare to leave, her husband warns her not to overdo it while playing outside as the weather is getting chilly. This small act of concern triggers a profound realization for Isabel, as she recalls that he had arranged his visit specifically during Noah's nap, understanding at last that he was not trying to avoid his son. She realizes that her husband had purposely stayed away all day just so she could have uninterrupted time to spend with Noah. Deeply moved by his kindness and consideration, she is filled with the desire to apologize for her harsh words the day before. As her husband turns to leave with Walt, Isabel is struck by the thought of the burdens he must be carrying, wondering what has been weighing on his heart ever since Noah was born. She watches him walk away, his posture suggesting a hidden sorrow. Isabel stops Walt before he can leave, asking if her husband has someone he can confide in because she is worried about him. She reassures Walt that she doesn't need to know the details, understanding some matters are private, but knowing that he is there to support the Lord is enough to put her mind at ease. Feeling reassured about her husband's well-being, Isabel's cheerful demeanor returns, and she excitedly tells Noah it's time to go play outside, reminding him to wear his coat first. Finally, the Lord gives firm instructions to Walt, ordering him to continue investigating the emperor and to gather intelligence from within the imperial palace. He also commands Walt to look into all the nobles and merchant families who have recently started dealings with the emperor, preparing to counter any potential threats.